In this video, I'm going to be talking about Sony's new lenses for their E-mount system, the 100mm f2.8 STF lens and the 85mm f1.8, because those are just really exciting new additions to Sony's lineup. So I'm going to begin with the 85mm f1.8 because that's the more exciting of the two lenses to me. I know a lot of people are really interested in that G-Master logo, but 85 1.8 is a great focal length and aperture in my opinion. It's one of my favorites. I've used that focal length and that aperture on my Canon with their EF mount lens for quite a while now, and that is just absolutely my favorite lens for most everything. I think that's going to be a fantastic addition to their FE lineup because that means that more people can get into Sony FE lenses without going crazy on Zeiss and without going crazy on G-Master, and it makes the whole platform more accessible. And I think that's a really wonderful reason to make something like this so that more people can get into your system. But I also think that f1.8 at 85mm is more than enough for shallow depth of field. That can even be noses in focus, eyes are out of focus, because it can be that shallow of depth of field. I'm really looking forward to seeing test shots and sample videos, but I think there's going to be a lot of great things to come with this particular lens. Additionally with it, it has a dual linear autofocus motor. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because it looks a lot like Sony's FE 50mm f1.8 lens, and that lens, from what I understand, has a lot of focus issues. It's slow, it's loud. Sony says it's quiet and can be used in video, but it's slow and it's loud, so perhaps that's only in comparison to their other lenses, but I think it's worth mentioning because it is a different motor in the 85, although the body design looks the same. From everything that I've been able to glean so far, that particular body design is particularly popular because it's easy, it's fast, it's light, and there's an extra low dispersion element, an ED element in that 85mm lens, which should provide a lot of help with making sure that the light doesn't do funky things like chromatically aberrate. A couple other things I want to say really quick about the new 85mm f1.8 before I jump into the 100mm f2.8 STF lens. That is that if you take a look on B&H in the link below at the MTF chart, it looks fantastic. It looks like it's going to be just super sharp right across the frame. I think that's really exciting because a lot of these cheaper f1.8s can be a little soft on the corners, and that doesn't bother me too much. But I know a lot of people are really intense about those corners. So one of the other things that's really exciting to me about this lens in particular is that it has an AF MF button on it, which means that you don't need to go into a menu to change that setting, and I think that's wonderful because a lot of Sony lenses don't have that little button except for their really high-end ones, and so putting that on a more consumer-grade lens means that is going to be so much more accessible to so many users coming from other systems. Additionally, there's a lock button on the lens, so for people who are used to back button focusing, that's going to be where you lock the focus in. So I think that's going to be a really positive addition to that lens that a lot of other Sony lenses don't seem to have. So there are a few, of course, but I think that's going to be a really welcome addition for a lot of portrait shooters. So the other lens that Sony has come out with today is the 100mm f2.8 to f20 or t5.6 to t22 100mm STF lens. So STF is interesting. It's smooth trans focus, and that's a little bit confusing. What it means is that there's an apodization element in the lens, and that apodization element, what it does is it smooths out all the bokeh, so there aren't any more harsh rings, or a lot of people talk about the bokeh on Sigma lenses being like onions. So it takes all that away, it clears all that out. One of the potential downsides of this optically is that it might reduce some detail, however, because it smooths out those edges. However, that also means that it increases other details. So, for example, this will give you much better foreground and background bokeh, while at the same time giving you much better focus and resolution on the actual subject. So these apodization elements can actually reduce contrast and reduce the color tonality, but what it looks like Sony's trying to incorporate into this lens a number of elements that will then be able to work really well with their HDR TVs. So I think that's, if you watch CES, they were big on their HDR TVs this year. So I think that's a really exciting feature for the future of imaging and what we can expect out of their next series of A7 cameras, because that makes me believe, at any rate, that those cameras will be able to capture HDR video to go with this lens and all that. I'll include a link in the description to another video here on YouTube that shows pretty well what that apodization element does for the bokeh. I think it's very interesting that Sony decided to go with an f2.8 or T5.6 because of that apodization element, because they've gone with the f1.4 on their 85mm G Master. They've gone with f2.8 on their 24-70 and 70-200. So within that 70-200 range falls the 100mm. Within that 70-200 range also falls the 85, but the 85 is quite a bit, brighter. And so I think this is a really interesting choice that speaks to things that are here and coming that don't necessarily relate to the actual lens and itself. Do you know what I mean? Like, I really believe that this is because Sony's looking for greater integration with their HDR TVs, much like the 18-110 power zoom lens that they have for video, that's much like their 28 to 135, because the 18-110 is intended for cameras like the FS5, FS7, and I think this is another lens that's geared towards a user that is creating content that ties in well with Sony's other devices. One of the things that's great about both of these lenses, is that they both have rounded diaphragm blades on their apertures. So what that means is that the bokeh is necessarily going to come out rounder than a lot of bokeh ends up coming out. So a lot of bokeh ends up coming out looking like an octagon, and you can say, oh, well, there's eight diaphragm blades in the aperture of that lens that they're using. And so what those rounded diaphragm blades do is it forces the bokeh to be circular. So there's 9 diaphragm blades in the 85mm, and there are 11 in the 100mm. So they're really pushing that strong bokeh in that 100mm f2.8, and I really think that's going to be very popular with a variety of portrait photographers and wedding photographers, because it's going to speak to an aesthetic that they're really trying to get, that dreamy unearthliness, and I think that's going to be a really popular choice for a lot of people. As a last note, the focal lengths, these lenses are FE, and so what that means is that they're compatible both on the full frame and on the APS-C sensor cameras that Sony makes. And there's a little bit of a fun moment here when that focal length from a full frame to an APS-C sensor is multiplied by a certain amount, and with Sony that's by 1.5 times. So the 85 will turn into 127.5 millimeters, and the 100mm will turn into a 150mm on APS-C sensors. So if you are shooting an Alpha 6000 series or an NEX like myself, I have an Alpha 6300, then this is going to be not as exciting as it could be for you if you're looking for a true 85 or a true 100mm, but I think it's also going to mean that those short telephotos can become longer telephotos at a very reasonable cost. So now you'll have the 50 and the 85 that can cover that short telephoto and that mid telephoto at a much cheaper cost than between the two of them, even than something like the Zeiss or their 70-300 or their 24-240. So I'm really excited about both of these lenses, because more G Master lenses, more professional grade lenses is great for Sony. Canon has a huge suite of L-series lenses, and Canon is really well known for the quality of their L-series lenses. But I really feel like Sony with these G Masters is pushing the bounds that Canon has kind of set up as standard with the quality of their glass and autofocus, contrast and color, resolution. So I'm really excited to see where G Master as a secondary logo goes down the line. But I'm also really excited about the 85, because that just keeps opening up options for individuals on smaller, tighter budgets to still create amazing stills and videos. So it's a really bright day, in my opinion, in the Sony imaging world. So I really am looking forward to hearing what you have to say about both of these lenses down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, if it added to your knowledge about either of these two subjects, please don't hesitate to like or subscribe for more content similar to this. And I really hope you have a lovely day.